Hey, welcome back to How to Write a Novel. So this is part 3 of me developing a romance story. I had this idea for a romance story and I've been describing it and it's taking forever. So one part became 2 parts, 2 parts became 3 parts. So obviously you should go back and listen to part 1 and part 2. But I thought I'd just do a quick recap here at the start of the episode just to get us back on the same page. There's a guy going across this bridge on a little motorized bicycle, there's a few of those around here, just people with bicycles that they've added little motors to. And man, I don't get that at all. This is a small city. Somebody tried to give me a bicycle the other day and I was like, dude, where would I go with it? I'm not trying to be funny here, but I can walk across the whole city in 2 or 3 hours. Where the fuck, if I'm on a bicycle, it's just I immediately just get to the edge of town. It comes down this little path. But at least there's an exercise component. What is the point of a little motorized bicycle? This seems like the height of foolery to me. Anyway, so this story, the idea is it's a traveling guy who's been traveling around the earth and he misses a connecting flight in a big Russian airport and he has to stay overnight. And while he's in the airport overnight, he meets this cool Russian girl who works in the airport. His name is Etienne, her name is Alyssa. And they hang out and have kind of a fun time, and then the next day, when it's time to get on his new flight, he's just at that crossroads where he just feels kind of repelled by the idea of getting on the flight, because then he's just going home. This is the end of the journey. This is the last leg. He doesn't really want to do it. See, case in point, the guy on the little motorized bike has just gone back across. He's just going the other way now. Because of course he is. There's nowhere to go in this town. He went to nowhere and now he's returning from nowhere. But yeah, at least do the exercise, you fucking cunt. So yeah, on the one side, he's like, I don't really want to get on this flight and go home because then whatever. Then my adventure's over. Then my boring life resumes. Meanwhile, I met this girl who works in the airport, and if I just leave, yeah, we had a fun little night, but I'll never see her again. So he thinks, what if I don't get on this flight? What if I just stay in the airport? And he does. For the whole week, he just stays in the airport. He sleeps in the airport, he keeps hanging out with this girl. They have a little week-long fling, and it's like a fun little romantic adventure. But now we're at the end of the week. The week is up and she's kind of put her foot down. She's put an end to this. She's like, all right, that's enough of this. This has been fun. This has been a silly, weird fling. It's been kind of fun. It's been kind of flattering. You're kind of cool and kind of attractive, but this is dumb. You got to buy a ticket and go the fuck home, boy. So that's where we pick up to discuss the ending of this story. Dude buys his return ticket home, but he also buys a second ticket. And he tries to pitch her on the idea of hey, here's an idea. Why don't you throw your whole life away and come to America with me and we can keep this silly romance thing going. So without further ado, let's talk about the ending. And for 5% of the time, as is tradition, let's complain about mosquitoes and the weather. All right, let's go. All right, I'm under a big awning to get out of the rain, and I'm fucking taking my life into my hands with this segment, because this is exactly what happened last episode, where I tried to record under an awning while it was raining, and then mosquitoes came and fucked my shit up and made me lose my mind. But it seems okay under this one, but man, it is just crazy. So about, 20 feet away from here, 30 feet, is a grove of trees, and I just went over there to pee real quick because this little awning thing I'm under is very visible. And in there, it's a nightmare. It is just mosquito city. It's just like crazy. So I guess I'm just lucky that there didn't seem to be any mosquitoes under here when this rain started, and now the rain and this wind and stuff keep those mosquitoes in their stupid little grove and away from me. But okay, this shouldn't be a very long segment because basically I've talked about this fairly recently, that a pattern I noticed with a lot of the stories I'm working on, and this romance story is definitely no exception, is the 3/4 stretch of the story is a bit of a wasteland. Like I've almost always got a really strong opening, and then things peter off more and more as I get deeper into the story until about halfway, where it's really, my notes are starting to get pretty loose because my brain just can't hold it all together. I mean, I don't know that it's even possible to really hold it all together, because I'm gonna learn so much about this story and about these characters just through the process of writing it, you know? Like I'm gonna come up with all kinds of little details and little moments and twists and turns and stuff that I hadn't really considered as I do the daily grind of working on it. So even if I had an ironclad plan all the way through, probably the finished product would not necessarily follow those tracks very closely. Like I do think it's important to have as many notes as you can and as clear of a path as you can, just so you can make it to the end of this journey. Because in my experience, trying to get all the way through a story without a plan, it's just too much. It's too much work, it's too big of a task. It all just unravels and becomes untenable. But yeah, from, the halfway mark, especially the 3/4 mark, all the way to the end, things are pretty scant. And then for the ending, I got an ending in mind. But basically, we're going to skip ahead a little bit, because basically we've gotten through, the meet cute part. These people met each other, and then they're getting kind of comfortable with each other. And then, question mark profit, what happens in the middle. But basically, the major beat of what happens in the middle is our male protagonist, Etienne. He really likes this girl, Alyssa. They're getting along great. Like, this is going better than he ever could have hoped it would. He just sees this girl in the airport, and he's like, I'm just going to try to chat up the girl in the airport. And then he kicks it up a notch by staying in the airport, and then she reciprocates, like it's going well. And he's just like, wow, this whole thing is going as well as it could, like a story. But the reality is they've only known each other for 4 or 5 days or whatever, like maybe a week. Realistically, they just don't know each other that well. There's not that much depth to this relationship, but it does feel, it feels big, it feels strong, it feels like that magical, holy shit, brand new relationship. The whole world is like a beautiful rainbow, everything is going great. Man, my life was boring before, and now it's exciting. The limerence feeling. I did a whole podcast about that. If you go to keithcourage.com and click on XO, I have an old podcast called XO, and there's an episode called Limerence. Or no, it's called, because that podcast, it's kind of fucking fancy pants and a little pretentious. It's called Je t'aime tellement pour un temps, which is French for I like you so much for now. But anyway, it's a collection of psychologists and therapists and stuff talking about this infatuation period of being in love with somebody set to music. It's one of my proudest podcasts. I think it's really good. Anyway, that's the situation Etienne is under. It's like, okay, the time has finally come for me to get out of here. The time has come for me to book a flight to go back to America. But he's like all in, all chips all in. And also, like I said, I think in part 1 of this dissertation about my romance story, he's kind of like an asshole. He's kind of a douchebag American guy, who is willing to step on toes, or is willing to rub people the wrong way a little bit, is willing to mess with somebody else's life to get what he wants. So he's willing to mess with her life to get this thing that he wants, to keep this infatuation romance going. So he pitches her the idea, you should come with me. you should come with me back to America. Let's just do it, you know? Like, whatever, fucking Russia, working at the airport, who cares, man? You know, he'll find hopefully a somewhat less offensive way to say that, but it's like, is that really important? What if this is important? Like, I think this would be a good way to pitch it, is that what if, that path not taken. Like, what if I just leave and that's it? And then for, you know, a lot like that Richard Linklater movie, Before Sunrise. That path in the woods of like, what if we just have this one little time together, this week together, and it's this beautiful memory, but that's all it ever is. But what if it could have been, like, what if this is the thing? What if this is important? What if you come back to America with me? What if we get married? What if we have kids? Like, he's gonna lay it on so thick. Like, what if this is the happiness you hoped for, that everyone hopes for in their lives? What if this is our chance? What if this is our opportunity to make that happen? So he's gonna pitch hard for throw caution to the wind, you know? Let's do it. Let's do the big, crazy romantic gesture. Let's book 2 tickets. And in fact, he's gonna book the second ticket and give her the ticket. Here it is. Come with me on this flight. Now, this next song, this is my idea, my original idea for the ending. And I'm going to tell you what this idea is, and then after this, I'll tell you the new ending, how I decided this was not the ending that I want. I came up with a different one. The only logical ending I could think of in this situation is part of what makes this girl, Alyssa, so hopefully attractive is she's headstrong, she's confident. She's not gonna get swayed by emotions. She's Russian, you know, she's tough. She's gonna open up to him throughout the story about how tough it is to be like this, to be in this country, to be in this society, to have to be strong, to have to be locked down, to not be able to express your emotions and all the things she doesn't like about it. But ultimately, she's not just gonna throw it away because some fucking dickhead shows up at the airport, you know? I couldn't ultimately reconcile her character taking the leap, because it is kind of a leap to nowhere, you know? It's like he's asking her to jump ship, like, come jump ship with me, but she's not jumping ship onto another ship. She's not jumping onto his ship. He doesn't have a ship. He's in the water. He's just treading water. He's just swimming in the water outside of the ship, and he's saying, come jump down with me. Jump off the ship. Come jump into the water with me. You know, it's like it's not a very appealing plan beyond the big romantic gesture, beyond the big, like, let's do it just to be crazy and in love. Ooh, man, it's windy. Again, I'll never complain about wind again in mosquito season. Wind it up, my friend. Ruin my podcast. I don't care. Fuck sound quality. Anything to get rid of mosquitoes. So that was my original idea for the ending, is she lets him down gently, but she says, like, you gotta just go home. You go home, I'll stay here. I mean, it's the modern world. Just because you leave doesn't mean it's over. We got cell phones, we got FaceTime, we got internet shit. There's no reason why we can't stay connected. And we'll sort this out, and we'll do this in a more reasonable way. I'll make a plan to come visit you in America, you know? We just don't need to do it like this. We don't need to run around like chickens with our heads cut off. If this really is the path as you describe it, if this really is our future, if this really is the big, what if we're together forever? What if we grow old together? What if we have kids and grandkids? If we really are that, then surely we can survive a little time apart. So that was going to be the vibe at the end. As he gets on the flight, the seat next to him is empty. Just a bittersweet, you know, looking out the window as his plane takes off, watching our fictional Russia fall away under him, watch the airport disappear in the distance. The plane rises above the clouds and just flies as the credits roll. And that note of ambiguity of like, What will happen in the future? Will it work out for these two? Will it not? Who knows? The little bittersweet moment. And I think originally when I was coming up with the grand strokes of this idea while I was in Russia and Japan, I said that the song I envisioned for the end was A Bell and a Whistle by Early Mart, which is a beautiful song, but I picked that one just because of the tone. But I found a better song that has the tone, but also has these just perfect lyrics, I think, for this feeling, for this moment. It's called The Future by Nada Surf. I was amazed how big of a Nada Surf fan I became, because they were like a one-hit wonder in the 90s. They had this song Popular, and that's really all I knew about them. For like, I'm literally 20 years late to the party with Nada Surf, or 15 years late. Because they never were really popular in North America again, but they were really popular in France. Like, if I remember right, their third album, which is like their best one, I think maybe it only came out in France initially, or it just was a big hit in France. They started literally doing some songs in French, and it's just like, that's awesome. Thank God for other countries like keeping our bands alive, because I became such a big Nada Surf fan, and I went to see them in Vancouver. And it was so cool, because the main guy, Matthew Cause, he, after the concert, you know, most people just left, but there were those of us who just stayed, and I was one of them, because I don't know, you know, it's just like, the people that are just there because they're like, oh yeah, Nada Surf, they're kind of cool, I've heard of them. And then the like fans, the super fans, where we all went and like just sort of crowded around the stage as the house lights were up and everything and the concert was over. And the main guy, Matthew Cause, he just came out and did like a little solo acoustic thing, just did another few songs just for us. And it was so cool, you know, just this little group of like whatever, 12 or 15 of us. Just awesome. And like, yeah, I don't know, it's just so cool. I love that stuff of like, there's the mainstream that everyone's like you're trying to reach them. You're trying to be a successful artist and you're trying to be a successful act. But at the end of the day, it's those few little people that really care are the important ones, you know? And I thought that was so cool. Like, I'd never seen someone do that before, of like catering to both. He had the big concert and it was great. And then just for those hardcores at the end, he just did a little mini show just for us. Because, yeah, let me just diverge quickly here. I've always found that weird. Like, I was always, ever since like I really started getting into music in the 90s, like I'm the guy who, when I find a band that I like, I get all the albums, you know? I keep buying the albums after the band's not popular anymore. I dig through all this stuff. And I mean, a lot of times it's not worth it. You know, a lot of times the big hits really are the only songs that are really that good. But sometimes you just find amazing stuff. Like Nada Surf I could make you fucking 10 mixtapes of Nada Surf songs that are awesome. And I guess I just never understood people that are fans of something but aren't mega fans. Like anything that I'm a fan of, I'm a mega fan. I'm only a mega fan or I'm not a fan, you know? But it just really became obvious that most people are not like that. And it's always been confusing to me. I'm like, I wonder why not? It seems strange to me. Like if you found a diamond, don't you keep searching in that area for more diamonds? Why do you just move on to somewhere else? You found a diamond right there. Keep looking, you know? Anyway, so this song, The Future, this is the acoustic version, the really gentle version. And I just love this song because the tone, it really strikes to me that feeling of, well, like the lyric is, I can't believe the future is finally happening to me. You know, like your life is shifting gears into this new dimension of like, what if this is an important relationship? What if we stay together? What if we build a home? What if we have a family? This future that most people are moving toward and most people want, but that I didn't have, now it's coming. It's here. I can't believe it. It's happening to me, maybe, you know? And there's these lyrics in this song that just, they put into perspective how short life really is, how finite life is. Like there's these parts in the song where he just lists things that they are sort of just like, sort of mundane things, but how many more times they're gonna happen in his life. Like, I'm gonna climb a small mountain, get 3 more bikes stolen, paint 4 more kitchen ceilings. You know, like you don't think about like, yeah, you just paint, I'm in a new house, I'll paint the kitchen ceiling. that seems like infinite. That's just going to keep happening. Oh, I'll get a new house, I'll paint the ceiling. My friend needs his ceiling painted, I'll help him paint it. But how many times are you actually going to do that in your life? 4 more times maybe, and then you're dead, you know? And it's just like, something about that really hits me, and it helps like justify what this character's trying to do, like why he's trying to push things in this direction to make this relationship happen, because life isn't infinite, you know? You don't always get another chance. Eventually your chances run out. Eventually your time passes. Eventually your life is over, you know? And I just thought that's like the perfect melancholic note to end this story on. And as I said, I changed my mind, but this was my initial idea for the ending. So here is The Future by Nada Surf, as our male protagonist flies away all alone, thinking bittersweetly about the adventure he's just had. And I didn't get bit by a single mosquito, so mission fucking accomplished. Right on.
Ba 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 ba. The future has long lines. The future looks like a screen. It's all you'll ever see, all lit up like a stadium. And who will be the first? The future's made of dust, and we are all just rust in the machine. Bound to make some more mistakes, get deathly ill 3 or 4 times. I'll find money on the street, no unexpected love. I will spend some time crying. I'll be helped so much, I'll be transformed. I'll get the baby in the king cake. I'll climb a small mountain, get 3 more bikes stolen, paint 4 more kitchen ceilings with just imitations and hooks, bits that you remember. Nothing else gets another look. The future's empty in its way. The future has long lines. The future looks like a screen. And I cannot believe the future's happening to me. Ba 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 ba. Arrows pointed, educated, words to let you know. The border guards have graduated, they're taking up their posts. I'll lift the receiver and find you there. I'll win and lose some bets. The magic hour will make me feel at home in a place I don't know yet. I'll spook the horse, keep the lights dark, leave mythologies alone. I'll try to say all the right things, but get hung up on the tone. And the future has long lines. The future looks like a screen. And I cannot believe the future's happening to me.
Yo, okay, let's wrap this up. Man, it is so insanely hot. You know, it's a different day now, and can hear some insects in the woods. Insects on one side, highway behind me. But it's just so hot. Oh man, this is a huge mistake. I was like, all right, I'm gonna walk up to Walmart and just buy a pair of pants, because what happened to my other pair of pants? You know, like I always travel really light, so I only ever have 2 pairs of jeans anyway. Oh, that's right. That's a dumb story. The first time I went to Amsterdam a few years ago, I sat in some pee. I only had 1 pair of pants at that point, and I was like, this is gonna be tricky, but can I pull this off? Can I manage with just 1 pair of pants? And then I sat in a puddle of pee somehow. So I just went into a Starbucks and rinsed my pants off, and I was like, ugh. But I had to immediately go buy some other pants. And I'm sure there's places in Amsterdam you can just buy cheaper clothing and stuff, but I didn't know how to get there. So I just went to the, the fancy tourist district and got a pair of 99 euro jeans. It was nuts. Like, I never spend a lot of money on anything if I could help it. The jeans I just bought today were 30 bucks. But 99 euros, that's like $150 or something. But I was like, whatever, I just need pants. And then they were button fly pants, which were just annoying. My friend Rayanne mentioned once, she's like, that like her image of me whenever we're at bars is that I'm always doing up my pants. Because, I'll come back from the bathroom and I didn't finish doing up my pants. And I was like, yeah, it's because I have these button pants. These things have like 8 buttons. There's so many buttons. But I got my 99 euros out of them because I had them until just recently. That's right. And they got a hole in the crotch. So I only had one pair of pants. What am I talking about? Why is this podcast about my pants? Anyway, this pair of pants, same thing's happening finally. Getting holes in them. Got to get a replacement pair of pants. So I walked up to Walmart and it is so fucking hot. Holy fuck, it's hot. Or it just feels like a weight. Like I'm wearing weighted clothes, but I'm not. And I had one bottle of water, I drank that whole thing, and then it's like, oh fuck, now what do I do? Just exposed to the fucking elements. It's just brutal. And I went in Walmart and I bought some more liquids, got my stupid pair of pants. But I started walking back and I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm like terrified. It's like at least an hour, maybe a 90-minute walk. It's probably an hour, but it feels long. Feels way longer in this heat, and it is just exposed to the sun. Just this route from here to home. There's nowhere, no shade or anything. So I just found this little shaded area. I'm just crouched in the shade of a tree right now, and I'm just like, fuck this. Like, what the fuck? What do I do? I'm fucked here. I wonder, I never bug my dad about this type of shit, but I could call him and just be like, buddy, you come pick me up. Whatever, I'm sure I'll be fine. I'll just fucking drink in some liquids, wait here for a little bit. But I figured while I'm here crouched in the shade, let's finish off this podcast. That'll get my mind off of things. Those insects in the trees, that's ludicrously loud. That's very silly, but you know what, in fact, I'm already feeling a bit better. Maybe I'll record as I walk, and then if I die of heat stroke, it'll be recorded. It's funny because even now, just being in the shade a little bit, I feel my brain coming back to me. But when I'm in the heat, my brain just doesn't work. But I'm like, let's try that, fuck it. Normally I've got a pretty good idea in mind of what I'm gonna talk about before I start rambling on a podcast. But the heat just erases my brain. So let's try it. All right, I'm walking into the sun. Let's try to survive. Hopefully, recording this dumbass podcast, get my mind off of this insanity a little bit. All right, so the big finale of the romance story is basically the dude Etienne has been living in the Russian airport for the week, and he's been courting Alyssa, the girl who works at the airport. But it's been a week. This is getting a little ridiculous. He has to eventually buy a plane ticket and finally go home. And she's encouraging him to do that too, of just like, I appreciate this fun little time we've had, but this silliness can't go on forever. And maybe you're a bit of a flighty guy. Maybe you need someone to just tell you to cut it out, but I'm telling you, not in a mean way, but just, it's done. You need to go home. You need to get a plane ticket and go home. So he does buy a plane ticket, but still ever the fucking romantic douchebag. He buys 2 plane tickets. Side by side, one for him and one for her. And this is when he starts his final Hail Mary, his final 3-pointer at the buzzer, his final campaign of like, hey, you should come with me. And I think it's one of those things of I just explaining it here in this little quick surface way. Probably it just sounds ridiculous. It probably just sounds like, what a bad plan, what a bad idea, what a bad thing to pitch to somebody. Who would do that? Or maybe, I suspect there's fewer people, but there's probably some people that maybe see it the other way, of just like, why not? Fuck it. Adventure. Do it. When a weird thing happens, just do it. But theoretically, since we're coming toward the end of a whole novel, theoretically, I'll have made it a tougher choice, or a better choice, a better sounding choice. Like, we'll get to know this guy enough to know that even though he is kind of a flighty romantic, and he doesn't have a very realistic view of the world in some ways, and he is pushing for this thing that is just romance nonsense that doesn't really make sense. But hopefully we'll also feel that he is earnest about it. He does mean it. He does think this could work. He does think this would be an exciting, cool plan. And maybe that feeling will be infectious. But, see, this is where the sun is already friggin' frying my brain. I already described this, didn't I? Because last segment was the sad ending, the original ending. He pitches her this idea. She says, no way, Jose. And he flies off by himself, melancholy, bittersweet, roll credits. So that was my original idea for the ending. This is my new idea for the ending. I'm walking by a building called Cook's Landing. It just makes me think of how my brain is being cooked. My brain is being cooked in my head. Thanks for making it all this way, by the way. This is the first time I've done a 3-part episode. I mean, in a way, this is like a 130-part mega project, but distinctly about one specific topic. I've never done 3 episodes before, so thank you for listening. Thanks for getting this deep into this shit. So I started thinking about this melancholy ending, and it seemed realistic, but that hardly seems like a good reason to end a story in a given way. I mean, I don't think you should go for an unrealistic ending, but I'm not a big fan of hyper-naturalism. Man, I don't remember the name of the book, but way back in the day, I worked at this comic shop downtown because they had a superhero guy, basically the comic book guy from The Simpsons. That guy already worked there. And he needed a fancy pants douchebag that knew about all the black and white indie comics and Chester Brown comics and shit. And that's how I got that job. And there's this girl who worked down the street at an art supply store who was a really cool musician, and all her friends were cool musicians. And I hung out with that little gang a little bit, not a ton. But it's weird because on the surface, it was like, oh, cool, fancy pants artist, this'll go well. But as I guess is obvious just from this podcast, just from the non-stop swearing and the fact that I try to be a little more personable and normal than your average writing podcast. Like every fucking writing podcast just starts with a little ukulele song and then a stiff, awkward person in a quiet room. I mean, I want to write fancy pants literary shit that people think is cool, but I don't want to be like that, you know? And yet things went off the rails real quick with that particular little group. Fucking now I can't enunciate because of the heat. With that particular little group, because they lent me this book that like 2 of them agreed were like, this is my favorite book. And I can't for the life of me remember what the book was called, but it was hyper naturalistic. And it was just about nothing. And it was so fucking boring. I could have killed myself and everyone else on the earth just trying to read this thing. I hated it. And I tried to be polite about it, but I couldn't not tell them that I hated it. And that could be why to this day I don't really have a lot of writer friends. I don't know. I don't seem to slide in too well with that world in general. So anyway, I didn't want an ending like that in my story. A drab, dour, It's like a good example are black and white indie films, especially, you know, back in the day. I always think of Clerks, Kevin Smith's Clerks. Truly a remarkable movie that these people made this movie for like $27,000, black and white, on a shoestring, looks like hell, no one can act, but it's amazing. It's such an amazing, it just captures these friends who work at a convenience store. It's so good. But even Clerks, the original ending, had the main character getting killed during a robbery for no reason. And when people asked Kevin Smith why it ended that way, he said, well, it's just, that's how every art house movie ends. That's how every art school movie ends. That's how every black and white indie ends. These things always have to end with a sad ending, a dour, drab ending. And he's not wrong. Like, try to find a black and white indie movie that's fun to watch, you know? Clerks is it. It's the one. It's the only one. It's ludicrous how much people, I don't know, I guess it's because if you slot yourself into artsy world, I'm gonna be an artsy person. I don't make dumb stuff, I make smart stuff. And I presume that makes people think they're not gonna fall into a trope. Oh, here, a sec, this wind is crazy. But I found some more shade. Let's go chill in the shade for a sec. Oh, man. But yeah, I presume that's what happens. That if you're an art school douchebag, you think you're original, you know? Just because your stuff is a little more literary or has more layers or has more analytical thought put into it means it's unique, but it does not mean that. It definitely does not mean that, because artsy people are incredibly generic. Incredibly. That's why it's so easy to make fun of. It's so easy to make fun of art school students. It's so easy to make fun of black and white indie films. What are these movies? What is this shit about? What are these books about? What is all this dour dog shit? Being sad and being depressed does not make you unique. So I don't want an ending like that. But also, the idea was, the way she was gonna, the female character Alyssa, the way she was gonna let old Etienne off the hook easily is she's gonna deny his request that she fucking fly to America with him on a fucking whim. But she's gonna say, look, I did have a lot of fun this week. I do feel like there's some kind of connection here between us. If what we have is real, if all this crazy shit you're saying about our future, and what if we had kids, and like, what if this is the one, we can't let this get away? If that's true, if we really do have that kind of connection, if our connection is that strong, then it can survive a little time apart. It can survive you going back to America, me staying in Russia, and particularly because we're in the internet era. We don't have to write letters to each other and seal them with wax and send them on a stagecoach to each other. We can FaceTime. I can talk to you the day you get home. I can talk to you. Maybe this could be something, but if it could, then it can wait. And he was going to say, yep, I guess you're right. And then we leave that up to the interpretation of the audience. Does it work out? Does it not? But like I said, too dour, too drab, too boring. It's not even depressing. It's fine. It's not a bad ending. It's just boring. It's not exciting. It's not interesting. Why set up this whole thing? Why write a whole book just to have a boring ending? What is the point of that? And I was thinking in my own life, I do not have a ton of relationships in my past. They're always way too intense and way too codependent. And a lot of cool stuff happened. I got a bunch of cool memories. I met some really cool people. You know, we had some cool times. But just as I get older and older, I'm like, wow, it also went worse every time. The first one went the best, then it went a little worse, then it went a little worse. And it's like, maybe I need to recalibrate, you know? Maybe I need to think about this different. Maybe I don't need to be looking for my big soulmate. Maybe I just need to get my shit together, get my own life together, and then actually look at, like, okay, what do I want in life? Do I want a family? Do I want kids? Okay, then let's look at it that way. Like, it's a different path. This fucking, I mean, those Richard Linklater movies are so perfect. Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight, where the first movie, they made it like a movie every 7 years, I believe, in this relationship between this couple. And in the first movie, they're young and idealistic, and this seems like the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. In the second movie, they're just adult realists. They're like, they believe in romance, they want romance, but they are a little too realistic to just throw themselves into it. And then sadly, the third movie is by far my least favorite because it's just, their shit is not working anymore. Their shit has fallen apart. And again, it's a bummer because it's the only logical place to go next, but it sure sucks. But yeah, that's why I've said before in other podcasts, whenever I talk about romance stuff, it is just so hard for me to put myself back in that mindset, back when I still fully believed in kind of the fairy tale Disney fucking prince and princess fucking bullshit. You know, it's just like, there's that person, there's that, like, we tell people the craziest things when they're young. There's one person out there, one person for you. What an insane fucking thing. How is that going to make anyone's life better? Either it's going to depress them because they can't find the one person, or they're going to find somebody and then hold on way too tight because that's the one person. Like, that's what I did. I'm like, ah, man, here's the one person. And then it just becomes like a black hole in your life and everything warps around it. But also in my experiences, this pitch in the original ending where she's like, don't worry, you go back to America, we'll stay in touch, and if things are meant to work out, then they'll work out. I guess in particular, that brought back memories of the girl I dated when I lived in New York. In the very first episode, my short story, that was Ayan. She read that story. Obviously, she's American. I'm Canadian. She's from Florida. I'm from the frozen north. It was the fire and the ice meeting in the middle in weird New York that's either freezing cold or insanely hot. But yeah, we were going through a bit of that stuff where my visa was, it did expire actually. I overstayed my visa by about 4 months because I was dating her and I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't want to go back to Canada. Fuck this. And we had those talks about like, it's pretty hard to move to the States. It's a lot easier for an American to move to Canada. And she was looking into it, but I mean, it would be so nuts, you know, like she loved New York. She's still there. Her whole thing is like, her whole goal in life was to get to New York and to make it in New York. She was working and like, I don't know what she's doing these days. You know, we follow each other on Twitter, but I don't know the intimate details of her life. But she, you know, worked at like a pretty high level law firm. She wasn't a lawyer, but she worked at the law firm. Like she was doing great in New York, where I was just drowning in New York. But the idea for her to toss all that to move to Canada for this schlub, this moron that's talking to you right now, would have been such a bad idea. And then we broke up and it was like almost a relief. It's like, oh, I can finally leave New York. And luckily at the border, they didn't give me a hard time. They really didn't care that I overstayed my visa. They were more concerned that we had too much Bud Lime and we had to pay duty on it because Bud Lime wasn't in Canada back then. But eventually we like reconciled enough. She came to Montreal and we hung out there. But that's, you know, that long distance thing really didn't work and wasn't gonna work. And like, maybe it does work for people that are more committed to each other, that have a stronger relationship. But me and Ayan at that point did not have a particularly strong relationship and it didn't work at all. I remember actually, as soon as I got back to Canada, I wasn't even all the way back to New Brunswick yet. I just stopped off in Nova Scotia. I was staying at somebody's house and I did a little like Skype call with Ayan and we got in a fight immediately. And like, I've been gone for a day and we're already fighting again? Like, this fucking sucks. So, didn't work. And with these characters in this story, it's the same thing. Like, this is not a strong relationship. This is a week-long fling. This relationship will not survive long distance. If he leaves, that's the end of it. They'll talk a little bit. She might even come visit him in the States or whatever, but it's not going to be what it was in the airport, and it's not going to be this grand, beautiful, magical future that he's trying to paint the picture of. That's not going to happen. And maybe it shouldn't happen. It's probably better that it doesn't happen. But if he leaves without her, that's it. That's the end of it. I can't bring myself to believe in any outcome except that. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, what if? New ending. So here's the new idea that I had for the ending. Again, based on a song, instead of the sad sack fucking acoustic Nada Surf song, I found this metric song that I'm gonna play called Too Bad So Sad, that's way more upbeat and way more the same way I've been describing that girl the whole time, that the song I use when I think of her is Get Off by the Dandy Warhols, like a real just shit kicker fucking cool upbeat song. And when he brings to the table the sad sack Mike Shinoda song, she counters with the silly Evan Olsen song, you know? Like, she's not a sad sack. She comes from a sad sack country. She's like vaguely depressed about Russian culture and being trapped in her Russian life. But deep inside, she is not like that. So if the Nada Surf song is his ending, we can still stay with that. He's on the plane, he's sitting there, he's waiting for takeoff, and that's the song in his head, the melancholy song of like, well, you know what? I tried my best. I tried my best to fling woo and to be romantic and to do the grand romantic gesture. I gave it my best shot. My phantom grandkids would be proud of me. Didn't work out, but hey, that's life, you know? He's like melancholic, but also sort of relieved because he knows this is crazy. It's like once the ball got rolling, he can't stop, you know? Once he starts making the grand romantic gestures and once he starts painting this picture of the grand romantic future, he's got to push it all the way, whether he really believes in it or not. And now that he's all by himself on the plane and he's about to fly home, maybe he's starting to relax a little bit of like, yeah, all that was cool and it would be so great if we could keep this thing going. But somewhere deep down, I know I was just talking a lot of bullshit and this wasn't going to work. And like, whew, you know, I don't have to worry about it because it's not going to happen, you know? Again, he, in his mind, he can like satisfy his own ego that he did it. He did all this stuff. He tried to sweep the girl off her feet. Didn't work out. He tried his best and maybe it all worked out for the better. Muddled sad sack ending. But then I thought, instead of ending on his note, how about fuck that? How about this story started with him, but it's going to end with her. She's the actual cool person here. She's the better character, I think. And I was thinking, what if everything is the same? He makes this pitch. She gives him the sensible, logical reason why she's not going to come along with him, tells him to just chill. If this relationship is meant to survive, it can survive a couple months off or whatever. Let's take it slow and steady. But then there's that other part of her that really, beyond him really, beyond this guy and this relationship, that she just doesn't necessarily fully trust him. She doesn't really believe that this relationship is this thing that he's presenting it as. But there's this other part of her that's just like, what the fuck is my life? I just work at the goddamn airport. I'm not happy. My parents aren't happy. My grandparents aren't happy. What the fuck am I gonna do here? Am I just gonna live my whole life in this goddamn country where everyone's a fucking miserable sad sack piece of garbage? You know? Again, I base a lot of my stereotypical view of Russia on Ayn Rand, who, I mean, it's a different era, obviously. She was born 100 years ago. But how, when she was a kid, she always talked about just the sense of life. She used that sentence a lot. I say it too, and I picked it up from her. The sense of life that a person has, or that a work of art has. What is the sense of life? And the sense of life that old school Russia had was depression, was being downbeat and dour, and it's like mysticism and religion, and everyone's like a beaten down mass, and they just feel like that's how they deserve to be. That's where they belong. And she hated that. Like, she was fucked in the head. Ayn Rand is a very peculiar lady, very interesting to read about. Her view of the world is really narrow, and there's real bad parts of it. She said weird shit about gay people, and when she was younger, she would get obsessed with serial killers because she loved their clarity of view and just all this weird shit. But again, old lady from 100 years ago, you know? But what's neat about the super razor blade view of life that she had, is part of that is that she believed in adventure and in the good guy and in being brave and overcoming, and like the hero of an adventure story, she believed in that. She believed that's how life could be, and she believed that's what she was. So for her to be in Russia, it was just like, are you fucking kidding me? I can't survive here. This is horrible. And then it went from bad to worse, because then it became super communist, and her dad's businesses all got commandeered and the family lost everything. And she escaped to America and was just like, fuck this, you know? And then even weirder than that, so she left Russia, never looked back. Obviously America, land of opportunity, land of the free, land of individualism. She was a lot happier there. But then decades later, when she was an older lady, she found one of her sisters that was still alive and brought the sister over to America and thought she was gifting this same thing to her sister, like, I got you out of there. But at this point, you know, it's like the 80s. It's a whole different, it's a different situation in both countries. And the sister had spent her whole life in Russia and had just internalized that life. And she didn't like America. She didn't like going to the grocery store and seeing 30 brands of toothpaste. She didn't like the individualism and the freedom. It wasn't comfortable. She didn't think that's how people should be. She didn't think that's how society should be. And it blew Ayn Rand's fucking mind that her sister willingly went back to Russia. She just couldn't believe it, you know? Really fascinating. Like, right, whatever your opinions, if you've read Ayn Rand books, I mean, I've talked about her before where it's weird. Like, I don't like either camp, really. I think people that don't like Ayn Rand are overlooking so much good stuff, but people that do like Ayn Rand are like weird and these like slavish followers, which is really uncomfortable. I'm just like, is it so hard to just, what's that saying of like being able to like humor an idea? That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like just to take an idea and to sort of just live in it for a bit, to examine it without having to be it, you know? You don't have to say yes or no. You can just inhabit the idea and just spend a little time examining it and thinking about it and seeing what you can learn from it. Is that so fucking hard to do? But I think it is. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot to be learned, I think, from Ayn Rand and her life. It's very interesting. But if you're just fully on board with Ayn Rand, you gotta quit it, because that lady was crazy. But anyway, this fictional country that is obviously Russia, but you know, in my story, that's the way I'm looking at it, is the same way Ayn Rand looked at pre-communist Russia. Maybe it's not the worst. Maybe they're not literally destroying everything like the communists did, but it's certainly not a happy place. And this character, Alyssa, she's just like, I don't want to get stuck here for the rest of my life. I don't want to do this. Every day I'm at this airport and I see other people from other cultures coming through all the time, and I'm just here. I get to see this every day and I don't get to do it. I don't get to be it. So the new ending is Etienne's on the plane by himself. He left the ticket with her, you know, the romantic gesture, but empty seat next to him. The plane's about to take off. He figures, all right, well, this is it. This is the end of the adventure. And then he glances up and he sees Alyssa getting onto the plane. And it really is last minute, but again, we're in Russia, weird rules, and she works at the airport. So she can do that thing that they used to do in movies where people just get on the plane at the last moment that you just can't do anymore because of security, post 9/11 stuff. But in Russia, in my story, if you work at the airport and you know the people there, you can still do that. You can still get on right at the last moment. And she's getting on because whatever, you know? She doesn't necessarily trust in this plan. She doesn't really believe it's going to work. It's more self-serving, really. It's like, hey, we'll try it. We'll do our best. I do like you. We did have fun. But I just want to get out. I just want out of here. And if you're willing to give me a way out, I don't know, I guess it's like in her mind, like she couldn't agree too easily and too readily. But then when it's right at the last moment, it's like, jump out of the nest or don't. She's got to jump, she's got to do it. So the last moment of the story would just be him looking up and just dumbfounded shock on his face, seeing her get on the plane. She'd look up at him just raise one eyebrow, you know? Just, again, it's gonna be a little tougher to describe in a novel, but I can see it in my mind if this was a movie. Just that perfect look of like her eyes are excited. She's raising her eyebrow like, huh? I'm doing it, we're gonna do this. But I want her mouth, the rest of her expression, to just kind of be dead. Like, oh fuck, I'm doing this, we're gonna do this. Hit the metric song, cut to black, credits. So there's the big ending. All right, I'm gonna try to go back into this horrible heat now. But yeah, I'm gonna play this metric song, Too Bad So Sad. Just, I love the tone of it. I love the tone of like, again, like what this character would feel like inside. This bounce to her step of like, yeah, I'm getting out of here. We're gonna do this. Hey man, you offered. All right, fuck it. We're gonna do this. And I really went for tone first, but then it's neat with songs, particularly because it's like poetry, but you know, like the lyrics kind of don't matter. The lyrics kind of have meaning because of the tone to me. The tone of a song comes first, but then after that, you can listen to lyrics and it's like, wow, this actually relates. And it probably relates to like 10,000 different situations, but it definitely relates to this situation. Just like, get me out of this place I'm in, got something trapped inside, you know, just all these thoughts like that, these lyrics like that. And it's just a fucking cool song. So here's Too Bad So Sad by Metric, and then you'd think we'd be done by now, but one more little bit to go, because I'm going to tell you about ideas I had for a sequel to this story, which probably will never actually be a thing, but just how interesting it can be to come up with ideas for a sequel because they can help guide the ending of the story at hand. And they did in this case too. So I'll tell you about that after. Here's the metric.
Take me out of this state I'm in. Go somewhere I've never been. Got something trapped inside, still alive. Where's that paradise I thought by now I'd find? Rough justice is a long lifeline, back and forth between
All right, let's wrap this up. I'm just sitting on the shore. Here's some waves. This is it's kind of like way back when I started this podcast and I was always on the beach in Vancouver. So yeah, 2 episodes back when I was talking about how I was going insane from this hometown and shit, things have kind of settled down in a nice way where I found this one particular area, which I guess this isn't so uncommon because I was saying this in Vancouver too, like that one beach I found in Vancouver was such a rare find. And then there's the secret beach in Toronto down past Victoria Park. Sort of a similar thing here, and it's really close to my parents' house, which is cool. There's this one place where if I go across the street, now that the snow is melted and the spring flooding is done and the water has receded, there's this one part where the park kind of juts out into the river. And just the way the river is curved and the way that this piece of land goes out into the water, it's like a wind tunnel. Wind just blows through here. Today it's not too windy. But that has been enough to keep mosquitoes away. We'll see how today goes, fingers crossed. But there's also a little grove of trees. If anyone's been following my little Instagram, Novel Pod, there's a shit ton of pictures from this one area because I go here basically every day. Because it's windy enough to stop mosquitoes and there's the trees that can help protect me from the sun when it's super brutally hot. And yeah, it's like I finally found a way to get out of the house that is pretty reliable. And to sit down and do writing and to pick up a big log that drifted up onto shore and do squats with it and whatever. Anyway, oh yeah, real quick, just before I wrap up the romance story thing, I just want to mention this because I know I'll forget if I don't say it right now. That first song that I played in this episode, the Nada Surf song, that reminds me that there's this Nada Surf song from a few years ago called Rushing. That's a pretty good little song, pretty nice little ditty, and it has such a good video where it's, 3.5, 4 minutes or whatever. And it's like a whole romance story in one music video. And if you're interested at all in just like short form romance, I really think you should check it out. Rushing by Nada Surf. It's so awesome. It's such a cool video. So like I was saying about that band, they were big in France. So this video takes place in Paris. Did I ever mention this before? I feel like maybe I did. Anyway, I'll just quickly mention it again. Where it's like the perfect little wordless short film. Where it's this couple that are riding the metro and they kind of catch each other's eye and just smile a little bit, and that's the end of day one. And they obviously ride transit at the same time every day because the next day they see each other again. And that's the second day is the little like confirmation of like, oh yeah, I remember you from yesterday. Like it's clear, like, yeah, we are definitely noticing each other, giving each other a smile. A little routine is being established. And the third day, the girl's sitting on the metro and she's at the stop where the guy always gets on and he's not there. And she's looking around and she's like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. That guy that I've been seeing for the past couple of days, he's not here today. And then as the doors are closing, he jumps in. He's like, oh, I almost missed the train. Whoa. And they, at that point, like have to acknowledge that whatever they were. What is this kid yelling about? Shut the fuck up, kid. He's saying quack, quack at some ducks. What a fucking moron. But yeah, because the guy rushed onto the metro, they have to acknowledge at that point, like, okay, we got a thing happening here. We're trying to meet each other each day and see each other each day. So then they sit down and they start talking, and then the rest of the music video is just them hanging out that day. They just go out for a little walk and then they go get drinks, and it's just like so great. It's just so great. I love it. I love it so much. It's like the perfect romance movie. It's weird. It's this little 4-minute thing, and it's like I don't think I can do better than that. I could make this whole story and make this whole movie and try to make it as good as I can, but really if you just want to get down to the core of meeting somebody for the first time, that Nada Surf video for Rushing does the job. Man, I like kids. Like, I do like kids quite a bit. I like babysitting. I like hanging out with people's kids. I don't really understand when people say they don't like kids, but I don't like kids that are just yelling all the time. Shut the fuck up, kid. Is this kid on this boat? I don't know. If you're on a playground with a bunch of kids, it's natural to be yelling. But what is this kid yelling? Doesn't he notice no one else is yelling? I don't know. I'm obviously just in a bit of a bad mood today. It's a good thing I don't have telekinetic powers. It'd be the worst. Because I would just yank them. I mean, this kid's wearing a fucking life vest. I would just yank him off the boat. You want to yell? Give you something to yell about. Is this really the best day for me to be ending this podcast? I feel like I'm in a terrible mood. Okay, well, look, what I wanted to say, what I want to end with, because the story's over. I described the ending, last segment, we're all done. But I was thinking just vaguely about what would I do for a sequel? And I kind of think that with different stories, like my main novel, Explode. I have some thoughts for a sequel to that story. It's not intended to have a sequel. It's not intended as part one of anything. I really don't write much with the intention of it being a series, anything really. I think everything's kind of standalone in my mind. But if there were to be a sequel, if there were to be a second story, you know, why not think about it? If you have some ideas, jot them down. And actually, next episode, I'm going to talk about that. That actually really can pay off. One of my other stories that worked out really well. But in this case, I had some thoughts for a sequel that, again, I don't intend to make. I don't intend for it to be a thing. I definitely don't have a full grasp of what the story would be. I only have the start. What would the start of the sequel be? But it was neat because it helped me come up with the ending for this story. The way I changed the ending from they don't leave the airport together, and I changed it to the new ending where they do leave as a potential couple. She does take him up on this idea to go fly to America with him and to have a weird adventure and to do some wacky shit. It helped me decide on that ending because I had thoughts about the sequel. And in the sequel, they did get together and they did try to make things work. So just knowing that, I knew I had to end this story with them in a more distinct place, like a less ambiguous ending. I want to make it way more clear at the end of this story that they are going for it. They are going to try to make this weird relationship that they've spun up over the past week. They're going to try to make it work as a real thing. And the thought I had for the sequel, just this image in my mind, it was weird. It came to me at the weirdest time. I was listening to the old soundtrack for the movie Judgment Night, which is like kind of a famous soundtrack. The soundtrack is way more famous than the movie because the soundtrack was one of the early rap rock things, like way before rap rock and nu metal became prominent in the late 90s. This was like 1993. And the whole soundtrack was they would take a hip hop artist and a rock artist and combine them. Well, metal specifically, not even rock. And it's got a bunch of really cool songs. And one of the coolest is called Just Another Victim. That's House of Pain with Helmet. And I was listening to that song and I was just thinking about different stories I'm working on and like where could this song fit? And it fit in a weird place. It's like, you know what? I actually think that the girl Alyssa from my romance story would listen to this song. You know, the unlikeliest character to listen to the Judgment Night soundtrack. But I was just thinking like that would be so cool. What if in the sequel, especially still thinking of it as a movie, what if in the sequel movie, she wakes up in the morning and this is the song that she plays, this is the opening song to help get her day going, is Just Another Victim by Helmet and House of Pain. Ridiculous. You're just another victim. You're just another victim, kid. Holy diver. I'm a survivor. Feeling like the Nero in Taxi driver. Like, just it would be the stupidest. Especially for like a romance movie sequel, like just so inappropriate. But that's not the song I'm going to play. I shifted my thought of what the song would be. But that idea of like, I like the idea of her waking up to this song. So I was thinking of it from there, like, all right, where's she at now? So she's in America. Last time she did leave with Etienne. But just as I'm just imagining the scene in my mind, it just sort of started building up, but he's not there. What I was imagining is she wakes up. I changed the song. I decided the song's going to be this song called Superstar by this Australian band called Ocean Grove. That's what I'm going to play at the end because it's just a fucking great song. It's like this. Australia always holds it down with rock, man. They don't let it go. Like, this band is really reminiscent of that whole nu metal movement in the late 90s and early 2000s. Because they just still think that's cool. They're like, fuck everybody. This shit's cool and we're going to keep doing it. And God bless you for that, Australia. You can always count on Australia. I love like so many Australian rock bands. But I'm thinking she wakes up, she brews a pot of coffee, she pours an energy drink in it. It's like super coffee. She guzzles that down as she puts on this song. And then she goes and wakes up her kids. Like, this is mom's wake up routine. Mom's let's get everybody excited in the morning routine. Get way over caffeinated, play a loud song, and go wake up the kids. Let's go, kids, get going. Let's move, man. We gotta go to school. Fucking get your shit together. And this is their cool, weird mom, you know, that like maybe is annoying to them now, but when they look back, they'll be like, man, my mom was weird. My mom was cool. And I was thinking she could have twins, a boy and a girl, and say they're like 7 years old. But as I was imagining it, Etienne's not there. The dad is not there. Because kind of like I was saying with those Richard Linklater movies, the logical conclusion is that this shit isn't going to work. I changed the ending of the original story that they're going to try. They're distinctly going to try, but I still don't believe it's going to work. I can't bring myself to believe in that at all. So I was thinking maybe this is it. Maybe the second story is about how she went with this crazy romance plan. And as far as finding your big soulmate and finding your person you get married to for the rest of your life and blah, 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 none of that happened. But let's look at what did happen. What did happen is a total change of venue, a total fork in the road in her life. She lives in America now. She made it to this whole different place. She has this whole different life now. And she's got these kids. None of this would have happened if she didn't go with Etienne. And the idea would be, like, I don't have any idea for what the overall story would be or the overall point would be, but I think the theme would be, or a huge part of the theme of this story would be to like destigmatize divorce. It's like, who gives a shit if they got divorced? Who gives a shit if their big fucking fantasy romance didn't work out? Who cares? Who thought it was gonna in the first place? To believe overly. Somebody just went by in a jet ski. And they're also playing bad country. Like, what, it's not exciting enough to be on a jet ski? You gotta blast country music too? And whatever. Fucking hillbillyville, live your life, pal. But yeah, like I can't bring myself to believe in the big romance that lasts forever and the big marriage that lasts forever. You know, I just think that's not a realistic plan, not a realistic goal, not a realistic thing to believe in. It'll just make you miserable when it fails. You know, you'll feel like, oh, I fucking failed. Oh, fuck. Or I think a way cooler way to look at it would be, yeah, okay, it didn't work. Who gives a shit? I didn't really think it was going to work anyway. It's not realistic to think that it would work. But why did it need to work? Why do I need to be married to somebody forever? Why does this fucking dumb romance need to last forever? Why look at that as the point? Why can't the point be, I live in America now, and I have 2 beautiful kids, and theoretically this guy's still in her life. She still knows him. He's still involved in the family and stuff. They're just not together. Like, to me, that's a happy ending. That's still awesome. Everything about that's awesome. In fact, that's probably more awesome than them staying together and just fucking fighting all the time and having some dumb fucking shitty marriage where they're just miserable and they're just desperately trying to make this fantasy happen. That would be, if not the point of the sequel, it would be a huge part of it, a huge component, a huge message. Message sounds bad. Again, we'll just say theme. A theme. I'm not trying to fucking teach you anything, you know. But I guess just to try not to continue to perpetuate these unrealistic ideas. Because I think they mostly just kind of make people miserable and crazy. And I mean, I've known a few divorcees in my time, and I don't think anybody's worse off. I got actually quite a few of my friends that have been divorced, and in no case am I like, wow, his life would have been better, her life would have been better if they'd stayed together. No way. I mean, it's tough and weird transition and such, but it's never worse, you know? So I don't know. Again, though, I mean, I'm talking way outside of my fucking pay grade here. I've never been married nor divorced. But for these characters, I just thought that is, it really helped with the ending to the first story to have that thought in mind about the second story. Like, if this is how it's going to be, whether anyone else ever knows this or not, whether I ever get to express that as a story or not, that I know that this is where these characters are ending up. They are going to be together for a while. They are going to get married. They're going to have kids. They're going to get divorced. That's where it's going. So it takes a lot of the ambiguity and uncertainty out of how do I end the first story. It's way easier to clear up those things in my mind. All right, so that's it. That's the end. Third part done. Again, as always, thank you very much for listening. It's nice to get these things out of my brain and off my chest, and it definitely helps with my little writing process. But it also helps that people actually listen to this. You know, I surely would have bailed out by now if nobody was listening. I mean, I kind of deliberately don't pay attention to numbers and stuff because it just, again, I just think it's demoralizing. It's like, what number is ever going to be enough? So especially early on with this podcast, I'm like, who cares? I just did it as like a chronicle, as a breadcrumb trail to follow for the future people that read my books. If I paid attention to my numbers early on, I surely would have been like, what the fuck am I doing? No one listens to this. But I've got a long history of podcasts that nobody listens to. That's not new. But lately I've been getting like just a lot of feedback and engagement. And I mean, obviously a lot of it I think is just that I never say like, hey, send me a comment, do this, do that. Here's my Twitter, here's my email, blah, blah, blah. But once I got on Instagram, it's just easier, I think, for people to drop me a line. And they have been. And it's like, nice. It's like, oh, cool. Hearing about my rambling journey through trying to be a writer, it's like certainly not hurting anyone, so that's good. But it's apparently helping some people, and it's a nice feeling. It feels nice. It feels so nice that I'm going to psychically apologize to that kid that I wanted to pull off his boat into the water. Sorry, kid, you didn't deserve that. It's just in a mood. All right, so to Etienne and Alyssa, the couple who met at the airport, had a cool, weird fling, kind of like those stories you hear from like your grandparents, like, yeah, we just met on the subway, and then we hung out, and then we got married. An old school romance of just we met at a weird airport, and then we got married. That eventually leads to a divorce. A divorce where everyone is better off for it. Cheers. Cheers to all that. So here's Superstar by Ocean Grove. See you next time.
Got the
shut down.